I sat in my car outside a Loblaws in Halifax last October, reading 19 text messages from a family that hadn't called me once in 8 years, and not a single one of them said, "I'm sorry." Every message said some version of the same 4 words, "We need your help." 8 years before that night, I drove out of my parents' house in Antigonish with 2 suitcases, 410 Canadian dollars, in a coffee tin my grandmother had hidden from everyone else, and a voice in my head that kept saying, "Just get to the highway. Just get to the highway." My grandmother stood on the porch in her cardigan and her slippers, even though it was almost freezing, and she didn't tell me to stay. She told me to drive safe, and to call her when I landed somewhere with a door that locked. But before I get into what happened the night those messages came in, I need to take you back to the Thanksgiving that started all of it. It was October 2016, and our kitchen in Antigonish smelled like turkey and my father's old wool sweater that he wore every single year because my late grandfather had given it to him. My older brother had just gotten into a competitive trades apprenticeship program out west, the kind of program that maybe takes 10 people a year, and he was the first person on either side of our family to get something like that. The house was packed. My aunt, my uncle, my 2 cousins, my grandmother, my parents, my brother, and me. I was 24. I worked the front desk at a dental clinic during the day and took night classes at the community college twice a week, trying to finish prerequisites for a paramedic program I hadn't told a single soul about. I had $1,100 saved toward application fees, textbooks, and the first set of clinical placement costs. I'd been saving for 14 months. I wanted to wait until it was real before I said anything. That night, my father stood at the head of the table with a beer in his hand and announced that my brother had gotten into the program. The table erupted. My aunt actually got up and hugged him twice. My grandmother put both hands over her mouth. My father, who I had maybe seen smile genuinely 4 or 5 times in my whole life, looked at my brother like he'd just watched him win an Olympic medal. I clapped too. I meant it. My brother had worked hard for that. He deserved every bit of that applause. But then my father said something, almost under his breath, almost like a joke, except it wasn't a joke at all. "Finally," he said. "Finally one of you is going somewhere." He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. Everyone at that table knew exactly who he meant by one of you who wasn't going anywhere. Later, after the dishes were done, because I always did the dishes every single holiday since I was about 12, my grandmother sat with me at the counter while I dried the good plates. She was the only one who ever stayed in the kitchen with me. "I applied to the paramedic program," I told her quietly. She set her tea down and put her hand flat on the counter next to mine. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The clinical hours, the entrance exam I'd already passed, the gap I still had in my savings. She listened like she always did. Completely still, like nothing else in the world existed for those few minutes. "You're going to do this," she said. "I've known it since you were small." 3 weeks later, my father found my bank statement on the kitchen table. I'd left it out, just careless, just tired. He didn't ask me about it. He told me. He said my cousin Patrick, my uncle's son, had gotten into trouble with some money he owed a guy from his hockey league, something he wouldn't fully explain, and that the family needed to pull together. The way he always said it, like it was a phrase that automatically made an argument true. He said $2,000 would fix it. I told him no. The whole kitchen went cold in about 2 seconds. "After everything this family has done for you," he said, and I looked at him. Across the same kitchen where I'd made dinner 3 nights a week since I was 13, where I'd covered the bell bill twice when his hours got cut at the plant, where I'd driven my brother to hockey practice for an entire winter when Dad's truck got repossessed. And I said, as steady as I could make my voice, "What exactly has this family done for me?" He told me I was selfish. Cold. "Just like your mother," he added, and that one landed exactly where he meant it to, because my mother left when I was 6, and none of us had heard a word from her since. He knew precisely what that comparison would do. It did it. Within the hour, the calls started. My aunt, my cousin's wife, a family friend I'd met maybe twice in my life. Every single one of them told me some version of the same thing. That family comes first, that I was being selfish, that Patrick was in real danger. Not one of them asked what I'd actually been saving for. Not one of them had ever asked. That night I packed my 2 suitcases. I went into my grandmother's room and told her I was leaving. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She went to her dresser, pulled out an old Tim Hortons coffee tin, and handed it to me. "I've been putting this aside," she said. "For exactly this." $410. Mostly birthday money she'd saved instead of spending herself, year after year, without telling a single person. I held it against my chest and then I held her. "You call me the second you're somewhere safe," she whispered. "Somewhere with a lock on the door." I drove out of Antigonish a little after 1 in the morning. I didn't have a plan. I just had a direction, and the direction was away. I ended up in Halifax because that's where the gas money ran out, and the courage to keep driving did too. I slept in my car in a Canadian Tire parking lot for 3 nights. I showered at the YMCA after I paid the day pass fee with change from my cup holder. I applied to every front desk and admin job I could find on my phone with 11% battery. On the 5th day, a walk-in clinic called me in. The office manager, a woman with reading glasses pushed up into gray curls, looked at my resume for maybe 20 seconds, looked at me for 10, and said, "You drove here alone from Antigonish. Why?" I gave her the short version. She hired me on the spot. $15 an hour, part-time, full-time within 2 months. Halifax wasn't easy. I ate a lot of Kraft dinner and frozen peas longer than I'd like to admit. I split a 2-bedroom apartment off Quinpool Road, with 2 women I found through a roommate group online. One of them played bass guitar badly at midnight, and the other one, a woman who became the most important person in my life outside my grandmother, helped me get through every single one of those first winters. Back home, from what filtered through my grandmother's careful little updates, my father told people I'd had a breakdown, that I wasn't stable, that the family was worried sick. I heard he said it at church, my grandmother told me, and I could hear how angry she was trying not to sound. "He can't make you smaller from this far away," she said. "Don't let him." I didn't. But it cost something, not being able to defend myself to people who'd already decided who I was. There's a particular kind of loneliness in that, being talked about in a town you can't correct. So instead, I made myself impossible to argue with. By the 2nd year, I'd enrolled in the paramedic primary care program, through a community college partnership in the Halifax area. I worked mornings, studied nights. My roommate quizzed me on anatomy flashcards at our kitchen table while we ate cheap pad thai from the place, 2 blocks over, that started giving us extra spring rolls for free, because she'd once sat with the owner's daughter during a panic attack outside the shop. That's the kind of family you build when the one you were born into fails you. Small, chosen, loyal in a way that doesn't ask for collateral. I finished my paramedic certification in 2019. My grandmother took the bus 4 hours to come to my pinning ceremony. She brought a corsage. My roommate made a sign so big she had to bend it sideways to get it through the door. My grandmother called me from her landline the second the ceremony ended. "I told you," she said. "I've known it since you were small." 2 years after that, I made advanced care paramedic. By 2024, I'd moved into a supervisory role with emergency health services, overseeing scheduling and training for a whole district. One of the youngest people, and the only one without a university degree to ever hold that position. It meant proving myself twice as hard with 0 room for error. I didn't mind. I'd had 0 room for error my entire life. At least this time it came with a pension. I bought a small semi-detached house in Dartmouth, across the harbor from downtown Halifax. Original hardwood, a leaky roof I was slowly fixing myself, and a back porch that caught the morning sun just right. I told my family none of this. This past October, I was sitting in the Loblaws parking lot after a double shift when my phone started buzzing and didn't stop. My father, my brother, my aunt, my cousin Patrick, the same Patrick. Numbers I didn't recognize that turned out to belong to relatives I'd only ever seen at funerals. 19 messages. No missed calls because I'd blocked those numbers years ago after the 4th round of guilt. They'd found my new number through a family friend on Facebook. I still don't know exactly who. It doesn't matter anymore. I sat there and read every message in order. My brother's first one was casual, almost cheerful. "Hey, long time. Give me a call when you get this." By message 3, he was asking if I'd consider co-signing a loan for a used truck. His credit was, in his words, still recovering. My father's messages were shorter, harder to read in a different way. He'd had a heart attack in August. He needed a procedure his coverage through the plant didn't fully pay for. He needed help from someone stable. My aunt wrote 2 long paragraphs about what family means, and then asked, almost as an afterthought, whether I could help cover a legal fee for Patrick. Apparently pulling together was something this family did annually now, like a tradition. I read all 19 messages twice. Then I called my roommate, who still answers the phone like it's 2018. "They found me," I said. "Which one hurts the most?" she asked. "None of them said sorry," I said. "That's what hurts. Not the asking. The not sorry." What none of them knew, what my father had absolutely no way of knowing when he sent that text about his heart, was that I'd been asked to give the closing address at a provincial emergency medical services conference in Halifax in 5 weeks. My division had been recognized for a rural response initiative I'd helped build, the kind of program that gets written up in the regional paper. My name, my photo, my title. My grandmother had seen the announcement shared in a community Facebook group, and quietly sent it to my cousin's wife. Not to start anything, I think, just because she was proud. And she was 81, and she'd been keeping that pride to herself for 8 years. My cousin's wife showed my father. That's how they found me. I almost pulled out of the talk after those messages came in. I had the phone in my hand, the words, "I need to step back from this," sitting right there on my tongue, for a long, quiet minute in my kitchen. Then I thought about my grandmother on that porch in October, in her slippers, watching my taillights disappear down the road in the dark. I called the conference coordinator back. I'll be there, I told her. The conference was in a hotel ballroom near the waterfront on a Thursday evening in November. A little over 200 people. Paramedics, hospital administrators, regional health officials, a couple of city councilors. I got there early and walked the empty room before anyone arrived. I found my grandmother's name card near the front. My roommate had driven her down from Antigonish as a surprise, which made me cry in the hotel bathroom for about 4 minutes, before I had to redo my whole face. My father sat 3 tables back, my brother beside him, my aunt at the end of the row. They'd driven 4 hours, which told me everything about what they expected this evening to be for them. My father wore his good shirt, the navy one he only wore for funerals and weddings. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, something else, and when the moderator introduced me, my title, the Rural Response Program, the bursary I'd quietly set up through the service for paramedic students from small Nova Scotia towns who couldn't afford the program fees. I heard the room respond, and underneath the applause I heard one specific voice. My grandmother's, saying, "Yes, yes, yes," soft like punctuation, like she was keeping the beat. I went up to the podium. I gave my prepared remarks on rural emergency response, on retention in small communities, on what it actually takes to get people to stay in this work when the hours are brutal, and the pay never quite matches it. I was professional. I was specific. I had practiced this in my kitchen 4 separate times, and then, near the end, I stopped. I grew up about 4 hours from here, I said. Some of the people in this room tonight know my family. The room went still. I left home at 24 with 2 suitcases and $410. My grandmother had been hiding in a coffee tin, because she knew, before I did, that I'd need to go. I didn't leave because I didn't love where I came from. I left because staying was something I genuinely could not afford anymore. I didn't look at my father. I didn't need to. I wasn't talking to him. The most important thing anyone ever did for me, I went on, was protect one person long enough to let her become whoever she was going to become anyway. Someone did that for me. Her name is Eleanor, and she's sitting right there. 200 people turned to look at my grandmother. She put both hands over her face. Her shoulders were shaking. The applause went on a long time. Afterward, my father found me near the coat check. His face was doing something I'd genuinely never seen it do before. Like 3 or 4 different things were happening on it at once, and none of them were winning. "You did real good up there," he said. "Thank you," I said. A long pause. "I didn't know," he started, and then stopped. "I know you didn't," I said. "You never asked." He looked at the carpet. "The surgery," he said. "I got your message," I told him. "I'll think about it." That was the truth. It was also the most I had to give him that night. My brother caught my eye from across the room. He didn't say anything. He just nodded once, slow. Not a thank you exactly, more like "I see you now." The first real acknowledgement he'd given me in 8 years. I nodded back. I walked my grandmother out to my roommate's car myself, her hand in mine, the parking lot lights catching her good earrings. "How are you feeling?" I asked her. She thought about it for a second. "Like I've been holding my breath for 8 years, she said. "And I finally got to let it out in a room full of people." She squeezed my hand 3 times, which has always been her way of saying, "I love you," when the actual words feel like too much. In the weeks after, word moved through Antigonish, the way it always does in a small town, slow, and then all at once. People who'd heard my father describe me as not stable for 8 straight years now knew exactly what I'd built while he was saying it. Old neighbors, guys from his old crew at the plant, his own brother. Nobody asked me to co-sign anything after that. Neither did my brother. About a month later, a card came in the mail. My father's handwriting, unsteady, the kind of handwriting that doesn't get used much anymore. "I should have stood up for you and I didn't. That's mine to carry, not yours. I don't expect anything back. I just needed you to know that I know." 7 sentences, no excuses tucked in anywhere, no ask at the bottom. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me in my entire life. I put the card in the same drawer where I keep my grandmother's coffee tin, still holding the ghost of $410 and a 1 a.m. goodbye on a cold porch. I haven't called him back yet. I haven't thrown the card out either. I'm 32. I own a little house in Dartmouth with a porch that gets the morning light just right. I have a person who once made a sign too big to fit through a doorway. I have a career I built out of a parking lot, a YMCA day pass, and $15 an hour. And I have my grandmother, who has known things about me my whole life, the way other people know the weather is about to turn. Here's what I want you to sit with, if you've stayed this long. There's a difference between "help me" and "I'm sorry." One is a transaction. The other is the start of something. You can't skip the second one to get to the first and expect anyone to open the door for you. You're not selfish for needing that difference to matter to you. You're not ungrateful for knowing exactly what you're worth. And you are not cold for finally understanding that love without any accountability attached to it is just obligation wearing a nicer coat. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't driving away at 24. The bravest thing was staying still enough, 8 years later, to let them come find me, and to finally be able to tell the difference between the people who only wanted rescuing and the one woman who had quietly, patiently been building mine the whole time. So I'll ask you what I sometimes ask myself, late at night, on that porch with the good light. If someone who hurt you called tomorrow, after years of nothing, really called, what would you need to hear before you picked up? Help me, or I'm sorry. Whichever one you need first will tell you exactly where you actually stand.